tie a very popular nymph pattern for you today. This is called the Zug Bug. Not certain when this was originally tied. I know it was tied, the gentleman's name was Zug, and it was tied as a kind of a case caddis representation, but it has been fished many different places to represent all kinds of different aquatic insects. I have fished this for trout and done very well, and also panfish. It is a great little panfish fly. It's very simple. It's some peacock sword and peacock herl for the body. It comes alive in the water. The peacock is a great color. It's great material in the water. The fish just apparently seem to think this is a very tasty little morsel. So that's the Zug Bug. Well worth tying up and having in your box, whether you're going after warm or cold water species. I'll get started. Start the Zug Bug by placing my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3906 in a size 8. I've tied these as large as a size 6 for panfish. If you are fishing this for panfish, one note is I would probably not fish anything less than a 10, because you get into 12s or 14s of these, the fish can tend to almost inhale them, and they're not hooked in the mouth, they're hooked down in the throat. Debarb the hook for thread. I'm using a Danville 6/0 in black. I'm going to go ahead and wax my thread. And attach my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook, and I'll bring it down to just past the point of the hook. Here I'm going to tie in the tail material. For the Zug Bug, the tail material is a peacock sword. For this size hook, I'm going to choose 4 of these barbs for the tail. Simply get those out perpendicular so the tips are pretty even like that. And then just peel those right off. Bring those together. I'm going to measure those about a shank length and tie those in. Still working my way down the hook shank a little bit to the end of the body. Trim away these ends here. The rib on the Zug Bug is a oval tinsel. I'm using a Danville size 14 oval tinsel. It's about a medium, maybe a small. It's not a fine. A lot of people will put a heavier oval tinsel in for their rib. I don't like a large tinsel in there, so I'm just using this smaller size. Tie this in, secure that in with a couple of wraps, and then I'll tie in the body material. Now the body material is just peacock herl. This is right off of a feather here that I've peeled these off. I'm going to use 4 of them on this particular size hook. I want to make certain I get these all arranged correctly. When I say correctly, the easiest thing to do is they all have kind of a hook on them like this. So if you get them all going in the same direction and all of them aligned this way, then it's really easy to collect them at the butt ends here and cut these and then tie that in. When you do it this way, then when I wrap this in, I'm going to end up with a fuller body. Advance my thread forward. Get a little bit of wax on my thread. Up to about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. And then take those peacock herls and start palmering them around. I should say wrapping those around, they're not palmered. Take your time with this. Once you get it started, then it'll go in really easy, but working your way around the point of that hook, you gotta be careful because just a little bit of a nick on one of those herls and it'll pop it right off. Those herls in and trim away the excess. The rib, I generally only put in about a 4-turn rib on this. It's a nymph, it's not like a wet fly. If you wanted to go with 5, you could, but you're just wanting to get the look of some segmentation. So I just generally wrap in a little bit more open spiral here, so I'm only getting about 4 turns in. Maybe just have that 5th turn come right up beside the head space there. It just gives you a nice segmented look to it. One thing about this oval tinsel you have to understand also is that it's a metal tinsel. This is a metal. You don't want to use your really good set of scissors to cut the end of that because it can blunt the ends of those. So get yourself an inexpensive, cheap pair of scissors that you can reach in here and cut that with. Ones that if they get too nicked up, it's no big deal, you throw them away. Just a little tip right there. Clean up this space a little bit. We're going to put in our hackle and our Wingcase. Now, most Zug bugs, the hackle that is used is just a brown hen hackle. However, I don't like how most people do it, and it's just my personal preference in terms of tying it. Most people will tie the tip of the feather in and wrap it around a couple of times to make a collar and then tie it off. And that's just fine. They look great. That works great. I prefer to tie mine in as though I were tying in the throat on, say, a regular wet fly. So I'm using some brown schlappen for this. I just like the look of it a little bit better. I've already prepared a couple of slips here like this. You only need this to go back to about the point. It doesn't have to go back too much further than that. But as I said, I just like the look of this a little bit more this way than having a collared hackle in there. And that's just my preference. Now, the last step is a Wingcase, and the Wingcase on this is made out of mallard flank. And originally, I don't know if the original Zug Bug used Woodduck feather instead of mallard flank, but I know these days, for the most part, it's not. It's generally it's traditional, or it's a mallard flank that's colored Woodduck. So sometimes you'll see it Woodduck. You can use a mallard flank that's colored Woodduck, or I suppose Woodduck if you've got some. This is a nice little fly for these weird little feathers that you have around in your mallard flank. You get these really small, weird ones like this. As you'll see in a moment, we're not using the whole feather. What I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off all of this where I've got tips that are just too ragged, maybe even peel a little bit more. I want to get it nice and even for the most part on both sides, like this. Not too wide. I like it a little bit narrower. And then I'm going to trim off the excess, all except for maybe about 1/16 of an inch, a couple millimeters, if that's how you measure things. We're going to place this right on top. Using my thumb, I'm just going to push down on that. I want to make certain that The end of this barb is behind the eye of the hook. I don't want it tied in, sticking out over the eye. And then I'm going to gently put a few wraps in to secure this like that and make certain that it doesn't twist on you. Sometimes it's starting to a little bit here. You can see it's kind of twisting off to the other side. Sometimes you can scooch that back and you can work it back and get that in the right position. If you can't, though, at least at this moment, you can always unwrap it and tie it back in. Once I have a few wraps on there and it's nice and secure, then I can put in a couple of more to make certain it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to put in my whip finish. That head's a little bit big, but you kind of have to have a little bit larger head on these because you got to tie in and secure that mallard flank. You can't just have, like 1 millimeter up there and it just won't stay in. At least that's been my experience, that the heads end up being just a little bit larger simply because the end of that rachis has to be under there to hold that in. Very important here. Before we do the next step, you want to go ahead and get some head cement on the head of the fly. The reason is we're going to cut that mallard flank a little shorter so we just have what is suggested as a wing case. I have, on some occasions, I have done this, but I've mostly seen other people as they're learning this fly, they'll do this. They'll end up grabbing this feather and pulling it that way, trying to keep it taut so when you cut it, what they end up doing is pulling it out from underneath those thread wraps. That's why I say put a little head cement on there, wait 30 seconds or so, that starts to set in, and it's just going to give you a little bit of extra insurance that you don't pull that feather out. So you're going to bring your scissors up underneath and lift that wing up a little bit. Then you're going to run your scissors, one side of your scissors underneath, and you're going to cut that so you only have maybe a 1/4 of an inch or so of the feather on there as a wing case. It's just a suggestive wing case. That's it. Zug Bug is a very, very popular pattern. It has been around for a long, long time. I've caught many, many trout on this, as well as panfish. My children, I used to tie up some beadhead versions of this. So if you want to do that, use like a 3906B, which is a little longer, and do a beadhead version of this. And my daughters with their little Snoopy rigs would just catch panfish all day long with the Zug Bug. It's just a fantastic fly. So tie yourself up a half dozen or a dozen Zug Bugs in a few sizes, and you'll be all set for both trout and panfish. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.